Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the roundup here on BloodbowlLive. Ready to go through all of the action from the latest week in the ADBBL Season 7. Season 8, even Season 8. God, I don't even know what's going on. That's what you get when you have 2 weeks off. My name's Chris, as you all know, ready to go through the week. A big thank you to Phil for looking after the IT and joining my two colleagues for the last couple of weeks. And my two colleagues are back, as always. We have got Mr. Scott Bryant. Scott, hello, sir.
Evening, Chris. How are you this evening? You sound as if you're, doing a job application for a telephone line for a discerning gentleman with your gravel-esque voice there.
I sound a lot better than I sounded last week, but yeah, we'll get there. I'm sure that now talking about Blood Bowl for an hour and whatever is gonna absolutely help when I have to go and do a presentation at work tomorrow. Anyway, joining us always again, Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, hello, sir. How are we doing?
Yeah, good evening. Pleased you're back.
Thank you. We've got lots of games to go through.
Sorry, are you saying that you weren't happy with Phil? Is that
No,
what
no,
you're saying,
no,
Tom?
absolutely not. Just pleased
Good.
that he's back and he's feeling better. That's all.
You kiss ass. You absolute.
Bonus points
I
for
love
Tom.
you, Chris.
Well, we've got 14 games, 13 and a half, 14 games to go through this week. We're going to dive straight in, and we're going to go straight into the Atomic Cherry Bombs versus the Washington Deadskins. Touched on last week because the game started, but then didn't finish for quite some time. Quite impressively, in the top corner of the tour play, it says you're only playing for 2 hours, and yet Jack was playing for 23. So I love how Torbe manages these things. It's very annoying that you can't pause it, but a 1-0 win for the Cherry Bombs. Scott, obviously you covered this game a little bit last week, but I may as well hand over to you for anything you want to add about how the game finished off.
Thank you, Chris. The game, as we mentioned last week, was interrupted by an invasion of snotlings from the other table. We finished it on turn 12. We both agreed that rather than trying to force the results, we'd make the most of the opportunity. So we came back on Friday evening this week with 4 turns left each to go. It was very finely balanced. It could have gone either way. Count Luther blitzed the lineman, dodged out, went to pick up the ball, which had gone off the pitch and get thrown back on. And he went to pick it up and he failed the pickup, and then he failed the last re-roll because of obviously loner 4+. The elves did what elves then do. A catcher jumped up, dodged out, went in, picked it up, got out, and then it was just a question of protecting the ball and moving it up the pitch to to score on turn 16. A really good match, great opposition in Jack. I think he's going to do a lot of good things with the Necro, although Luke seems to be turning his head with the idea of going into Renegades next season, but we'll wait and see. But I'm sure he's won one, lost one. But it was a really difficult match. Could have gone either way. So very entertaining. And kudos and a big thank you and shout out to Jack there.
I think Jack's a little bit of a dark horse because I think he had a really tough, group last year with John and Robert and James playing a team, getting back into the game, having not played in a while. And by the end of the season, he was getting some tight games, some tight results, and everyone who was playing him was saying that it was a tough game. It was a tough call. So a bit of a dark horse maybe going into this season.
Just on that point, sorry, Chris, just want to shout out 2 things from me. First of all, I spoke with John, Mr. Reader, who was also in the store playing on Friday night, and John did make the point of telling me that he said Jack is a very good coach, and within a couple of seasons, he wouldn't be surprised if Jack was up there pushing for the honours boards. Really, he's a very, very highly rated coach. That was the first thing. And on the second thing, just if you are a rookie coach listening tonight, and the one I was very stressful for Jack as well, just to say, don't think that you've got to finish your game in 2 hours or then and there. Most coaches in this community are very supportive, very helpful, please ask questions. Please, reach out if you've got any concerns. And, most people will accommodate, reconvening if they can, to finish any match that potentially runs over. That's how nice we are, despite what people say.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Tom, before we move on from this game, because I'm aware that we've covered it a little bit before, when the game was kind of left with, only 4 turns left to go, it was obviously 0-0 at that point. How did you kind of think the game was going based on did you expect it to end with this 1-0 result, sort of based on how it had gone already, or did you think it might go the other way? It looks like the only actual thing that happened for tour play is the touchdown. So the way that we see it there with the cashes and everything like that was pretty even. So what were your kind of thoughts?
Yeah, I think from what we talked about last time, they were match for match kind of thing. They were quite evenly balanced on the fact that you got the Wood Elves, but then you've also got the Necromantics who can do some nice stuff, especially with those werewolves, and also that Ghoul with sure hands as well, which kind of gives it the edge. I kind of thought it might have been a 0-0 draw, but clearly Scott had other plans. So congratulations.
Scott, we'll come to more of your games later. Well done to Jack for what sounds like a hard-fought game, if not maybe the result that he was looking for. We will go then to what was the first game of this week, which featured Huntington's Folly versus the Wolverhampton Shamblers, Gnomes versus Necro. Jane coming into this game in a very strong position with a very strong start to the season, but Gnomes also coming into this game having played very well so far. A 1-0 win for the Gnomes. And I think, Tom, the thing that is kind of standing out to me is this Gnome team, I think, was possibly, if we look at last season, maybe unfortunate not to break out of their group. And showing maybe Gnomes have grown into their own and showing that Gnomes are a bit of a force.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, this one they had 3 trees on the pitch as well, with a deep root on there as well, potentially giving a bit of an advantage. But we've kind of said this many times. This Gnome team has been specially built. None of the skills on the team have been randomized. They've been purposely saved up for and bought. So there's a whole load of dodge in there on practically half the team now. Plus you've got a block grab treeman, so that's quite threatening on the line, especially. So it did look like it was going the way of the Necromantics in the kind of injuries. So basically, turn 2, you've badly injured a fox. So one of their 2 most poignant scoring pieces out of the game. And then secondly, a gnome was dispatched turn 4. However, things started to take a turn with actually a zombie lineman. I believe looks like it's dead, but didn't regen. Like the looks of things as well. And then obviously it seemed from tour play, it seems that it was a bit quiet in the second half, apart from the turn 16 touchdown to the Gnomes.
Yeah, it's not often that we see too many casualties because regen does do a lot for these undead teams. So to lose a lineman, I think Jane will probably not be too upset about in the grand scheme of it. You would think for all the positionals that she could lose. So yeah, a tough one there, Scott. It looks like sort of the trees for these teams, and we've seen it with the halflings as well, that especially when you've got 3 trees on the pitch, the amount of casualties we're seeing come out of the stunty teams that can use a tree is pretty incredible. How do you kind of like, if you're Jane or if you're someone else who's coming up to play one of these teams with all these trees, the gnomes or the halflings, how do you combat the trees? Do you just try to avoid them? Is there anything in particular that you try and kind of work on?
That's a good question, isn't it? I think unless you have claws and you got the numerical number to at least get 2 dice, I would stay away purely because they are so impactful. if you are going to put a player near them, make sure they're at least one square away. So there are things you can do, using tackle. If you've got any tackle pieces, focus on the gnomes, don't focus on the trees. Hit and run if you can to take those players out and reduce the numbers. It is the numbers game. But just picking up on what Tom said there, this was a very big swing in the match. If you look at the commentary as well, the fact that the fox had gone and Tom only had one fox for the match. He had 3 trees, but 1 fox, and he played the game really, really well. He bogged Jane down. He almost took a 1-0 lead at halftime against the kick as well. And the second half was doing what you should do. 3 trees, walking up the pitch, slow, slow, slow to get your touchdown as well. And, kudos to Tom. We talked about it last week. They seem to have found, he seems to have really found the formula with the gnomes as well. Having either the 2 foxes or at least 3, or 3 trees is a really well balanced one as well. So yeah, kudos to that.
Tom, before we move on to the next game, just a quick word on Jane's Necromantic Horror. She's built quite a strong team here. She's having one of her best seasonal runs that she's had. 3 victories and 2 losses, I think, which is one of her best records in the league since she joined. Looking at the skills that she's got as well, she's got some really impressive players there. Block, sidestep on a ghoul runner, wrestle, tackle, jump up on a werewolf is very good, and lots of sitting SPP there as well for additional. Shouldn't be downhearted with this tight result.
Absolutely not. The ironic one is that she's got grab on a wraith with no hands. How does that work?
He scares them into the appropriate square.
Okay.
I think that's getting wrapped in a bed sheet and falling over, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It seems to be.
No, this is a really good team. We've said it many times before, and clearly she is saving up SPP because that werewolf has got 17 and the ghoul runner's got 16 SPP. So clearly, are they now looking to go for stat increases? And if so, which ones? What would you choose?
Oh, on a werewolf, I don't know, because a movement 9 werewolf is pretty. A movement 9 or a strength 4 or an edge 3 or a passing 3 werewolf, or edge 2, sorry. I don't think there's any bad stat increase on a werewolf. I think anything is going to make them a bit of a superstar, really. I don't think there's a bad choice.
Hmm.
Well done to Jane for a hard-fought game there. Well done to Tom and the Gnomes for a very good result. We'll move on to the next game, which is Gnomes again. And I think arguably another very good result. While not a win, a 0-0 draw here against Jack. 0-0 on the score sheet, but 5-2 to the Gnomes when it comes to casualties. Those trees once again really sort of getting in the mix and causing some pain, particularly against Brave to put a beer bore up against a tree, but very, getting the injuries where they need to. Looking at Norse lineman going out injured as well, but also a very sunny game. Would have probably been sort of, I guess it hampers the Gnomes with their throw teammate possibilities rather than anything else. Scott, Jack's had a kind of maybe slower season than he wanted here. I don't think he should be too disheartened by this because clearly we're seeing this is a very strong and very kind of well put together and a coach that knows how to play Gnomes very well. So I don't think it's necessarily shouldn't take too badly a 0-0 draw against someone who's clearly kind of mastered this stunty team.
Agree. Gnomes are not a gimme. Maybe in their first season, people were thinking, there's an opportunity. If I get rid of the Gnomes, then I could be looking at a lot of SPP. We saw a few pitch clearances last year to support that as well. But this year, Tom has really turned them into a team you've got to respect, you've got to play strongly against. From what I've seen on the report, there were opportunities for both. So despite the number of casualties, Jack was able to stay in the match as well. The Fox got caught on the tripwire at the end of the first half. So Nuffle was smiling down on Jack, evening Jack, if you're in chat. And second half, both the Valkyrie and the Fox have the chance to score, which again shows how equally matched these two teams and these two coaches really were during this game. So whilst it might look just like a 0-0 draw, not a lot happened. A lot did happen, but unfortunately, neither coach could get over that final roll of the dice to get that 1-0 win as well. Spoke to Jack on the weekend. He says, yeah, he recognises his season's been a bit more up and down than he was hoping for, but he's still enjoying it. He's still looking at pushing forward, and he's still really looking forward to progressing as far as he can in the knockout phases.
Tom, looking in the chat, Jack is in the chat and saying that wrestle is an absolute pain. Both skull both down is useless against the gnomes. Not something I actually considered until Jack said it there. The gnomes, as far as stunty team goes, are the kind of perfect thing to combat like a Norse and a dwarf team, because all of that both down, all of that block that the Norse team and like a dwarf team would have is just immediately combated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope Tom's got his bingo card, because if he got Knuffle Tripwire, that's one that's, I think it's going to be quite difficult to get on the actual bingo card.
It's not one you want on the bingo card, is it?
No, it's not the one you want. but hopefully he's got it. So I hope everyone's got their bingo cards, and Scott will tell you how to get it. So you basically go to Scott in the shop, ask him, put a donation to our charity, get given a card, and there's a number of things that you can basically tick off, and if you tick them off, you win prizes. So yeah, let us know how you're getting on with those. Yeah, you mentioned this dome team. It is an interesting concept, because, as you say, for me, Norse are a bit of a nemesis to me. I never really know how to really play well against them. So maybe this gnomes are a chink in their armor, as you say, with all that wrestle. Question to both of you: would you ever think about taking gnomes now that you've seen how they're starting to progress?
I've got a gnome team. I haven't painted them yet. I've got a kind of idea for them that I think is quite fun. But do I realistically see them as a team that I would want to take? The Foxes are quite fun. Quite like the Illusionists, kind of quite a nice quirk. I think they've got some interesting additional rules when it comes to balls and pitches and things like that I think are quite fun. Would I take them for anything more than a friendly? I don't think so, because I think that I feel like something like ogres are more fun and lean more towards the kind of things that I want to do. So probably not. Scott, what about you?
The jury's out at the moment. I think they're very. I'm starting to see how people use them. I like the Fox. I'd prefer it to have I prefer it when it has a movement 8, but it just shows how vulnerable it is. And in terms of the trees, okay, it still feels like they're missing something. And we've talked about this before on this program. We talked about it on the NDP. So at the moment, recognizing the time as well, and we've got lots to get through. Jury's out. Last one, Tom. You can finish that off. Gnomes, yes or no? Are you more convinced in light of Tom's performance?
No, I'm not a fan of the gnomes, and it's kind of also on the fact that I don't really like the figures as well. Sorry. I'm very much the skills and how they play. Yep, they look good, but I just don't like the current figures.
Fair. Well, let's move on to a couple of different teams then. We have got the Orphic Gladiators versus the Waldemir Wasps, a 2-0 win for the Chaos Renegade side, and a 2-2 on casualties here between the two teams. Luke's had a very interesting kind of season. He's had some good results this season, some good kind of hard fought battles with this team. Chaos Renegade is one that I really struggle to kind of get my head around, because the focus on the big guys and the fact that they're big guys with nega traits rather than like an ogre team. They're a really interesting one to kind of play, but he seems to be getting into a bit of a groove with them here. Scott, it's interesting because he seems to be getting some momentum, getting the results where he needs to. He's currently sat in the top 4 of his conference. Seems to be kind of knowing how to play this kind of big guy heavy team.
I think it was big guy, super heavy big guy team this week, Chris, because it wasn't just the 3 big guys, but it was the 4 because he brought on Creek. I was in store on Friday. I did ask him, was there any particular reason he chose Creek and not someone like Skitter? In terms of having that more edge, opportunity and threat, especially against the Wasps and the bashiness that they're inherently famous for. And he said he was just going to go toe to toe. So I think, to your point, Chris, Luke is starting to find his feet with this team. He's got some good skills as well coming through as he develops them. If you look at the Skaven now, he's got Skaven with horns and block. So it's not just a case of standing on the line and bash, bash, bash. He can actually, go after someone as well. So plus as well with horns, if he blitzes, that's a strength 4 blitz. When you got block, that's not a bad thing to have up your sleeve as well. So yeah, I think he's done well where he has had the roles. Prehensile tail is always going to be a challenge one, and Cannoneer. And I have to give a shout out to both coaches. They were both embracing the spirit of the match, with several glasses of refreshment on Friday night as well. And it was very vocal. It was very entertaining as well. So good shout out to both coaches, Simon as well as Luke.
Tom, I've played both these coaches myself so far this season. Both have been really, really entertaining and really fun games. Blackhawks are we know Blackhawks are an interesting team in that they are quite slow, but some quite good base skills there. And looking at his roster, Simon has got some good skills on some of them. Block, tackle, mighty blow, block, thick skull, and pro is quite a good combination there. Guard on the big guys, so he's got some, and a couple of goblins with some kind of handy skills there. What do you think is kind of missing at the minute? Is there anything in particular that kind of he can do with this Blackhawk team to kind of just get them into a more competitive point?
No, don't think so. He's got, like you say, he's got definitely got a ball carrier there in one of the Goblin Bruisers with sidestep, defensive, and safe pair of hands as well. Safe pair of hands was a random, which was nice, which is quite a surprise. So he's building this team up nicely. It's just been unfortunately, it's been successful the previous game against the Rats, but this Chaos Renegade team seems to be going leaps and bounds. Really, it's doing very well. And again, we've seen Krieg quite a lot this season, but again, doesn't really show up on the scorecard for any injuries or anything. It's that old tale. It's unfortunate that Torbay doesn't show knockouts, but it'd be interesting to know how useful Krieg was actually in this game.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much Luke got from that additional kind of strength on the pitch. Also interesting to see that Simon took a spent petty cash on a bribe to have one in his back pocket. He's only recorded a couple of fouls there. I wonder whether there were any more. But we don't see that too often where people spend the petty cash sort of beforehand, because we know it adds to the inducement that your opponent gets. So an interesting kind of choice to maybe maximize the goblins with some fouling.
I think Simon was I think there was a bit of, maybe a bit of lamentation for good old Moonface's Goblin Bruiser linesman, who actually lost -1. Okay, he was passing, but he's out for a little bit now, so that didn't really help. Took a bit of a shine off it. But yeah, I still think there's a lot to offer within Simon's team with these Orcs as well.
Two coaches who I think are improving season on season and game on game. So good luck to the pair of them with the rest of their games that they've got coming up. Moving swiftly on then to a game which you can rewatch over on the YouTube channel at BloodbowlLive. The Transfigurian Terrors versus the T-Belly Trudgers. A 1-1 result here. I think you probably have to say a better result for the Halflings than for the Vampires. We know this is a very, very strong looking vampire team. Not to take anything away from the very impressive trees that we've got for the Halflings. Scott, I know that you've kind of watched this game. I think were you possibly in store for some of it as well? I can't quite remember, but a kind of last gasp equaliser from the Halflings, grabbing the draw from this one.
They did. They started off with Carla going in and taking out a Thrall lineman, but then within a few turns, the Terrors had sort of regained the initiative. Throws there from the trees as well, which KO'd a couple of the stunty guys as well. So John did literally take control, and when he scored on turn 8, he got his touchdown. And it did feel a bit, the momentum was going in the way of the Vampires at that stage. But we know both of these coaches are very, very experienced. Justin plays these, plays his halflings ridiculously well. And it got to a point, even when you think, oh, Griff is badly hurt, you'd think, surely is it going the other way for me? It's not going to be my night tonight. But the Halflings persevered. There was a blitz from the Vampires to get the ball into the crowd. The crowd threw it back. A vampire picked it up and actually threw it further down the pitch. If it had scattered in the right direction for John, away from him more, then maybe this wouldn't have been the result. But the ball scattered backwards towards the Halflings, and Justin had one opportunity to go. He had to do some dodges, pick up the ball, throw it, 6-up pickup. He had to 3-up catch it, and then he still had to go in with one dodge, I think it was, and a couple of rushes in there. So he was really embracing the spirit of sort of elf bullshittery and really doing anything that can, and it just turned off. Just a shout out to John as well, because there was, in the build up to that last activation, good evening, Mr. Reader, if you are listening. John actually mentioned to Justin in terms of if he had blitzed with Carla a certain way, how that would help in terms of the direction of the throw, etc. So it just goes out to show, and another great example of the community. Whilst people are playing high level Blood Bowl, people will always stop and help. People will always, say, have you thought about doing this or this before? And, making sure that coaches have all of the opportunities. So really, really good match. John obviously remains undefeated, although not the perfect record. But Justin, 3 from 3, looking very strong with those halflings. Sorry, 2 wins and a draw for those halflings.
It's it's nice to hear that kind of thing from some of our experienced coaches. And in a game like this, you've got 2 very experienced coaches who arguably possibly don't need sort of coaching between each other, and are still willing to kind of suggest and talk about ways to play the game to improve and learn. So really really good showing from the 2 of them. Tom, we're seeing a lot more for a number of reasons, I think, because we've got some low value teams and because we've got lots of redrafts in there. We're seeing inducements play a big part in a lot of games. And as far as inducements go for a halfling team, being able to take a Master Chef, Griff, and Carla, that's a bit of a superstar lineup for those halflings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and equally, before this week, I was at top of the most dirty player honours list, and clearly Justin took heed to that and is now currently second with 14 fouls. So as you can see, this was a very foul-induced game, throwing everything at these vampires to slow them down. I don't know what more I can say that you haven't really said. It seems that it was a very good back and forth game of lots of control from 2 very well kind of seasoned coaches.
Well done to John. Well done to Justin. 2 very strong coaches, 2 unbeaten coaches fighting out a draw. It's maybe what you expect from two people with such experience behind them. So well done to you both, continuing your unbeaten runs there. We will move on then to more vampires, and we've got vampires versus Chaos Dwarfs here, and a 3-2 victory for Harry and his Chaos Dwarf team. a little bit of a shout out to Harry on these. They are one of my favorite teams in the league this season, with all of the top hats and how each top hat has a different skill onto it. I've been talking to Harry since he played Chaos Chosen a couple of seasons ago, and been speaking to him since then about how when would he next come and play in the league, and it was always going to be when he could bring Chaos Dwarves and get a lot of top hats on a lot of those players. That was always going to be the key. So it's really good to have him back in. And an impressive win here against Andy, who has been getting better and better each season, and got a very nice and very strong vampire team here. Tom, we still don't really. We kind of Chaos Dwarfs are an odd one. We kind of know a bit about them because we've seen them at tournaments, and they are a team of legend. But we've got this new Chaos Dwarf roster, and it's kind of a little bit tricky to establish exactly how they are, how they kind of play. We're still maybe just learning about Ironheart Skin and how you can combat that. But Harry seems to have made it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. He took Fungus the Loon as well as a star player. So again, didn't seem to be that useful because of the quick touchdown on the vampire side. But then, these Bull Centaur blitzers clearly are the powerhouse of the team, scoring all 3 touchdowns. It is a very interesting format for a team. You've got, as you quite rightly put it, those dwarfs with the Ironheart Skin. Still not sure how useful the Flamesmiths are. I suppose the Disturbing Presence is pretty good if you're going up against teams that do a lot of passing. And then those Bull Centaurs are always a bit of a threat because obviously they've got movement 6, but also sprinters and sure feet, so they can more or less get anywhere across the pitch. And never underestimate those hobgoblins who killed my players when I played against Tom. So they are, and that is the funny thing. You look and think, oh, they're a hobgoblin. Are they same as a Noblar? Are they same as a goblin? No, they're actually got the same stats as a human lineman. So they are still pretty resilient as well.
This was a really, really entertaining game. Shout out to both coaches on this. And yeah, the entertainment was palpable. Both coaches laughing. I just want a special shout out to Andy. We've said it several times about the community and helping out. The Chorfs are new for Harry. He's been waiting for them to come out. I love his top hats, like you, Chris. I think they're fantastic, and the red ones when he gets casualties as well. He was starting to play, still learning a lot about this as well. And even Andy did mention it to him when Harry decided to put his hobgoblins on the line of scrummage. So it just shows what a sort of just a true gentleman Andy is with that. And both of them were taking their opportunities. Both of them were really just going for it. You did have a Flamesmith, you mentioned the Mayor Tom, did self-implode on the line.
He did.
So okay. He went, yep. And Andy was using hypnogazes more than I've seen most vampire coaches use the hypnogaze as well. And he made a clear blitz on the ball carrier. He could actually have equalized on the last turn. Unfortunately, he didn't get the roll of the dice, didn't manage to get the pickup. And yeah, it was went just beyond his reach as well. Both coaches had a great time. And it really was one of those matches. It's the sort of match that would attract people into Blood Bowl. Lots of laughs, lots of enthusiasm, lots of support and help with questions and queries. And both coaches seem to really enjoy themselves. So, hats off to Harry and the top hats. And Andy, just, it will come, mate. It will come. Just keep up with it. Sorry.
Question for you both before we move on to the next game then. Chaos Dwarves, with the kind of strength and ability to kind of punch their way through a field and any of the kind of additional things they've got there, it looks like Andy has scored very quickly here. He's scored in 2 turns with a pass and catch on turn 2. Are they a team that scoring quickly against is the right thing to do, or giving them more opportunities to line up against you and punch you. Is that something you should avoid? Are they a team you should stall against, or do you think they're a team that you need to just get the touchdowns quick and then kind of play from there?
Tom, do you want to answer that first?
I think it's all down to how they are set up on the initial run, because they've obviously got a lot of their main like force are dwarves, and just stay away from them. Like what we said with the treemen, if you get them in the middle and just run around the sides, yeah, you've got the bull centaurs that could potentially do it, but they're on their own, and you can easily one die them if you buddy up, or if you've got something of a bit of speed. So yeah, I suppose it's that kind of thing of try and get those touchdowns in before they start kind of taking out your team, in my opinion. What do you think, Scott?
I have the one thing I've really recognized in this division as well. If you know, the win is everything. If you can score early, put the pressure on your opponent. Yes, we have a lot of good coaches who do the 2-1 grind, but I think, you know, make sure you get at least one score on the board if you're receiving, especially on the first drive as well. I agree. Stay away from the dwarves. Don't be afraid to engage the bull centaurs as well as the hobgoblins. Be mindful of stab. So unlike a classic dwarf team, they've got a bit more about them in terms of the chorfs. Yes, they've got the flamesmith, but particularly the bull centaurs, giving them what is in effect movement 9. They don't have edge. So think about, you know, gumming them up in the positional so that you force them to dodge, you force them to do rerolls. And try and, you know, take off those hobgoblins one at a time. So yes, very interesting team to play against. I suspect we'll only see them get stronger.
Well done to both coaches. A very entertaining and fun game, it sounds like, which is what we like to see this season. Moving on, flying through the games because we've still got a lot to get through. We have got an interesting battle. I always think that Amazons versus Norse is an interesting one. Two teams that Games Workshop released at a similar time. One built for dodging, one built for blocking. You know, a very interesting battle when they meet up against each other. Dave with a 2-1 victory in this one, but Graham getting a good amount of SPP with the additional casualties in there. So a very kind of tight affair here, which has ended with a victory for the Norse coach. Tom, you've said that Norse are your kind of a bit of your kryptonite in a way, and I believe you have also played Amazons in the past. A tight matchup here, thin, like not many differences between it, and a win for the Norse, possibly down to experience. What do you think?
Possibly, yes, because they are on the characteristics of each of the teams. They're very evenly matched. You know, you've got 2 lots of strength 4. Everyone's roughly around armor 8. So they are quite, you know, quite evenly matched on that side of things. They are, as you just mentioned, they are very yin and yang. One is dodgy, one is blocky, but it does seem that on this case, the block has won out, even with I don't know if he's taken any inducements. Oh yeah, he just took a temporary agency cheerleader. Okay, and so it was very evenly matched. It's nice to see that the Amazons, as we said, are quite quick. A lot of dodge in there, so they've used their advantage early on to score their first touchdown, and then it took a while for the Norse to go through. Equally, you know, don't be afraid to go up against these blocky teams, as you can quite easily see here on turn 5, where the Amazons have caused a casualty, because even though they have got block, they have still only got armor 8, so there is some possibility of actually breaking armor, unlike things like dwarves. So looks like it was a quite nicely evenly played match, but by the looks of things, that block just tipped it over the edge.
Scott, it looks like this was almost a classic 2-1 grind. Amazon scoring early and the Norse getting 2 touchdowns there. Very impressive to see both touchdowns coming from a now quite good, skilled up Norse lineman. Block and thick skull as standard, and then Dauntless Pro and Strip Ball. You've got a nice little additional blitzer there kind of in the team.
You really do. The quick score really set the tone for the match. Dave equalised, got back to 1-1, and the Norse Woodguard were sort of keeping the ball safe. The Amazons, after turn 6, apparently did go for a 2-turn touchdown at the end of the first half. Didn't quite get it. So Dave really put a shift in, especially as he's taken a few more casualties than the Amazons, and he didn't have a Valk. He didn't have a Valkyrie on the pitch as well, which meant, that was really missed in terms of the mobility of the team. He was quoted as saying he was expecting a thrashing when he thought he conceded on turn 2. So I think the difference for me is it's a new team for Graham. Graham's finding his feet and finding his feet well with these Amazons, because 3-up dodge is not a gimme. So he's finding his feet well. And I think the extra skills and the experience that Dave had with these Norse were what carried him on to that 2-1 win. I think it was that close in terms of a match.
A good result for Dave. He's on a decent run of results so far this season. We're hoping that goes on and continues. Graham, looking at his results so far, 2 draws and a loss so far this season, but against some kind of tough opponents. In fact, he's only played Norse this season. He played Norse in his first game, Norse in his second game, and Norse in his third game. So I think Graham will probably just be happy to have got the Norse games out of the way and able to move on to something else. Good luck to both coaches going forward. We'll see if their runs continue there and how Graham gets on against a team that isn't Norse. And we will move on to, well, it looks like we've got 3 back-to-back games for the Numpties Nurgle team that we've got to look at. So first up on the list for the Nurgle team is a 1-0 win against the Gilded Knights of Cerulean. I believe it was Phil's first loss of the season, but a very tight game between the two of them. And Tom, it looks to me like Elliot's games so far have all been pretty tight. Lots of draws, only winning by 1 if the win comes. So he's really having to kind of grind this team a little bit, and maybe an element of getting used to the way Nurgle work.
Yeah, but I think he's slowly getting the hang of it. And again, just playing it easy, not randomizing any new skills, knowing what to put on certain things. So he's now got a block on a Pestigore and on a Bloater, and also on a lineman who also has claws, which is a nice little touch there. So this game does look like it was, again, an interesting one. Good old Acorn was present on the pitch, which is nice to see. But again, no real notice of him actually doing anything. So these star players, sometimes they work for you, sometimes they don't. You could have KO'd things. And it does look like it was quite a tight game between in the middle of the game, really. Lots of a few fouls from the Corn team, and then injuries on both 3 lots of injuries, should I say, on the actual Nurgle team, which is a bit unfortunate on that side of things. But as you say, Elliot seems to slowly be getting the understanding of how this team works. He's in the past had quite bashy teams anyway. His dwarf team are infamous. The original Numpties, should we say. So yeah, it's an interesting one on that side of things. And Phil, I don't know how he feels with the game. How was it the fact that Nurgle just dragged him down? He couldn't really get any kind of maneuver or purchase on the game. Not sure.
Phil's first loss of the season. He's had a very good start to the season currently, and he's got a very high value team. So coming up against someone who is not redrafted immediately is going to get him sort of looking down the eye of some inducements. Scott, Phil's first loss, but against a coach like Elliot, maybe starting to get his groove. Not a result that he should take to heart. Still a very strong start to the season.
Agree. Just to shout out, Elliot's typed in chat, Acorn did plenty, he survived, and we all love it when the squirrel gets to the end of the match. So well done, Elliot. If we take a step back and look at Nurgle, and if we go back a couple of seasons to Acredes, even Scott, if you're in chat, and the Hot Spews, we were talking a lot at that time about how Nurgle was a very solid, and they get a lot of 1-0 wins. And this even goes for the Inglorious Pustards with Nick as well. They are a very solid team, difficult to play against. Can cause a lot of headaches, in terms of their mechanics, their style, and they're just relentless team. They keep coming and keep coming. And Phil just really, seems to struggle in terms of breaking them down. There's a long way to go. I think Phil's done it. And again, he's not playing just any old random coach. Elliot is a champion. He's proved that. He's proved that, he's very capable with not just his dwarfs, not just his necro from last year, but he's, learning and developing, seems to be enjoying the Nurgle as well. So from that perspective, I think it's something that Phil should take heart from. He's got still a good solid spine of a team as well. Great result. I think good result for Elliot. Still plenty to play for, still plenty to build on for Phil as well.
Well, we'll go on to Elliot's next game, which was against Jack and his Norse. A 1-1 draw here. Casualties very similar. Touchdowns very similar. A very tight game with two coaches who have been, grinding out results here. Jack has had, we've said before, maybe a tougher season than expected. But I think a draw, a 1-1 result against someone like Elliot, who I know he knows and we know is very good, is not a bad one. Tom, how did you see this matchup going? I think going into this game, I actually wondered whether Jack might have the advantage here because Elliot had a bit of a slow start.
Yeah, I would have agreed with that, especially with Jack's two Valkyries who have got some great skills on them, and a redrafted Norse team against a kind of almost fresh Nurgle team. You would think maybe it's got the advantage of the Norse, but again, it's the Pestigors which interest me a bit, like in the Chaos Trojan team with those horns. I think they're quite a kind of a hidden kind of star player within the Nurgle team, especially like I say, with horns, where you can literally blitz someone and effectively just two dice people without the need for any assist. So yeah, it does, again, like you say, it was a slow, lots of action going on, lots of different things, injuries on both sides by the looks of things. And again, I think Elliot did well with this game against a very strong Norse team.
Scott, I think Nurgle versus Khorne is quite a similar matchup because actually, positional wise, you mirror each other almost identically with your with the linemen, with the Pestigors and the Khorne Gors, and then the Bloodseekers and the Bloaters. Norse, a bit of a slightly different challenge, less of a kind of mirror matchup. Other things to think about for the Nurgle team.
They are, we've talked about block across the board. We know with Jack, he's got some really good skills, especially his Valkyries, exactly as Tom has said there. Good to see the squirrel come back. Never seen the squirrel fouling as much as Elliot was making him earn his nuts this particular match as well. So shout out for that one as well. Speaking to Jack yesterday, Elliot looks as if he was going to get another 1-0 win then, and Jack came right at the end. I think he did some one dice blocks as well, which led him to get in that turn 14 touchdown. And I think that draw could come back and be very valuable at the end of the season in the standings. We know Jack, he knows his Norse now inside out. He's been playing them a couple of years. So yes, from that perspective, I think a good result for both coaches. Maybe I think Jack came out of it slightly the happier.
Looking in the chat, Elliot says that a acorn fowl knocked out the Yeti, which I think is a
Beautiful.
pretty good result, really. Pretty happy with that one. Elliot's triple matches came to an end with another 1-1 draw. A 1-1 draw against the Chaos Dwarves of Mr. Tom Huns. Two former champions coming up against each other here. And it's interesting because I would imagine that sort of these two coaches have probably played each other quite often. So there's probably an element of knowing the team, the roster that you're up against, and also an element of knowing the opponent that you're facing. Tom, how much do you think that kind of is going to have an impact in a game like this? Like how much are you playing knowing how your opponent's going to play because of their own play style, and how much are you playing the roster that is in front of you?
Yeah, like you say, I bet you're kind of almost playing the coach in these situations. If you know them well and know their style, you can almost bait them into making mistakes. That's how I would say you can look at it. It's an interesting matchup. Both of these coaches are formidable. They know the strengths and weaknesses not only of their team but of the opponent's teams. So as you say, I think that on this one it was more down to how is the coach going to play their team rather than what's the team made up of.
Looking in the chat, Elliot's saying both coaches had bad luck. He failed a rush with a re-roll to blitz the ball carrier, failed a rush to score, although other dice were needed. Did get timeout though, and he got 5 double skulls and had a 4+ dodge to score and 3 rushes, but with sure feet.
That was Tom, by the way. Sorry, Tom. Just to let you know, it was Mr. Hunt who had all the double skulls because he was telling me all about it yesterday. So I apologise because obviously my dice rolls from the previous season have been rolling off on him. So yeah, apologies for that, Tom, if you're in chat.
It sounds like it's always horrible, Scott, when kind of dice don't go your way. At least when it kind of levels out, you can kind of get on board with it because you're having the same level of luck. But Thomas had a good start to the season here. 2 wins and 2 draws. He's played against some tough opponents to get to that point. So he's having a good season with what will be a new team for him.
He's having a very good season with the Chorfs. He's second in the UK rankings and 6th overall on tour play. Now, I don't know exactly how many Chorf coaches are on there at the moment, but you can only play what's in front of you and beat what's in front of you. So, yeah, the Prince of Vampires and the Prince of the Amazons is now the Prince of the Chorfs. Well done, Mr. Tom Hans. I think from Tom's perspective, he is such a competitive coach. I think he was disappointed by the fact he got so many double skulls as well. And I think, I took it that he felt that maybe he left a couple of points on the pitch there, because of the dice, the frustration of it all. But again, as Elliot said, the dice weren't going his way either. So I still think there's a lot to play for. I still wouldn't count out either coach by any stretch of the imagination for the remainder of the season as well. They've both got good, solid platforms now to move on with for the rest of the next 4 or 5 matches.
And as we've said before, with the lack of bonus points, the difference between a draw and a win can be a lot smaller than it used to be. So, well done to both of you. Good results all around there. 4 more matches left to go onto the home straight, and we've got a match for each of the 3 of us on this list as well. Let's go straight to Scott. We'll go straight to you. A 3-0 victory against the Boulders Bowlers Corn team. With sweltering heat making your lives much more interesting. I was on the pitch next to you, and there was one point where you just kind of looked over to me and went, "We're just playing 7s now," because you had both lost so many players, I think, to the weather and to other things. Tell us how this one went.
First of all, you're right. The sweltering heat did have an impact. Just a big shout out to Owen as well. Second game in a competitive environment with Corn. he is learning quick. He's very quick to pick things up. He's got a good mindset already as a coach. He's not just thinking about how do you perform one activation. He's thinking already as a coach, how do I develop the situation? So, for example, do I need to block to move other players out? Do I need to move into assists? What do I do it? So he is learning, and he is learning very quickly. And I think that's a reflection of all the time he's been spending and the support he's been getting off Jack, off Tom, and off Elliot as well. So big shout out. And yeah, great enthusiasm for the game. And I think those two combinations will put him in fantastic stead for the future matches. I was frankly really terrified to start with because, of course, he took the big boy himself. He took Morg. And when Morg is +2 on Mighty Blow against Armor 8 Elves, it's going to be a long old day. So as soon as we had the sweltering heat, my plan was score quick and then see how many players we can get off the pitch. So we both lost one in the end of the first drive. And I was just getting lots of knockouts and KOs. So I managed to put pressure on. Strip ball on a War Dancer is phenomenal. Went in, managed to turn the ball over, managed to recover it, almost lost it, but a few fortunate dice rolls. And maybe Nuffle was a bit more forgiving, especially when a bit of hubris on yours truly's part. So I tried to get SPP on a specific player and was thinking of a crowd surf as well. Nuffle said, no, you're supposed to just score the bloody touchdown. So 2-0 up, and just at the start of the second half, then in terms of the sweltering heat, we both lost 3 players. I lost two catchers and a lineman, and bless him, Owen lost one lineman, one bloodseeker, and he lost Morg as well. So Morg was off the pitch for quite a while, and at that point, even though he had the ball, I went in with a War Dancer, managed to get it off him, managed to pick it up with an elf, managed to get it back, and the thrower went down the pitch and did a 3-up pickup with Rio. It's an attack, 2-up pickup, 3-up pass because it was 10 square because he's got Cannoneer, and a 2-up catch on a War Dancer as well, and that made it 3-0. So yeah, it was very close. People will be pleased to know that Owen did injure, badly hurt, but didn't kill a War Dancer. So at that point, I was expecting screams of delight from several people in the store, but yeah, there were a few smiles and a few well dones. I was expecting a bit more. So yeah, really difficult match. And like anything, I'll take it. I'll just, 3-0, trying to get the quick touchdown, quick win, or the quick score, and then moving on from that. But yeah, I think there's a lot to the two coaches I played last, Jack with his new team and Owen with his new team and the new season. I think there's going to be a lot of competition in the next couple of seasons within ADBBL.
Tom, looking at Owen's team and his results, he's very new to the game in general, and I think so far he's played Elliot and Scott, who are our 2 conference finalists from last year. So it's a proper trial by fire. But it's games like that, sort of to give him a bit of comfort. It's games like that that will get him better, quicker playing against opponents.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I completely forgot that Corn could have mutations. So that's an interesting way to go. Whereas if you Elliot's team with Nurgle, where last season a lot of people who were playing Nurgle were really maximizing out on the mutations, Elliot's gone the more traditional route and gone for the classic blocks and things along those lines, where we can see here, we've got a Corn team that's going completely off piste with some nice mutations, which I like. I like a little bit of variation.
It's good to get a few games in against different styles of opponent. Nurgle play a very different game to Wood Elves, so getting those different styles of games in your first couple of games sets up well for the rest of the season. Scott, very well done, unbeaten so far this season, and yet to concede as well. Is that right?
So so far, but I don't really want to talk about it because I will I will incur the wrath of Nuffle. And yeah, I just would like to slip quietly under the radar.
Well, we'll make sure that that radar picks you up loud and
Yeah.
clear for the next few weeks. Moving swiftly on to Rats versus Corn, Skaven versus Corn, Plague Brigade versus the Bleeding Clowns. A 1-1 result here. A result that I think both coaches probably in this game felt that there was a win to be had, but a draw nonetheless is the end result for this one. And it's a kind of it's a story that I think we probably know quite well here. The Rats took an awful lot of casualties, 5 casualties, four injuries. It says here in this game. But still have come out with a draw and an okay result. Scott, coming to you first. Skaven, we've both played them, we both know them well, and looking back at Carl's season last year, coming up against a strong coach like Scott with the Bleeding Clowns, a 1-1 draw, a good result to build on.
I think it's a very good result for Carl. He was struggling in terms of the positionals, and bless you, Chris. He was struggling coming into this match in terms of the positionals. He lost his Roger. He took Bomber Dribble Snot, I could understand, and we were talking to him beforehand, and he decided to go for the Warlock Engineer. I think he liked the idea of a bit of a warp lightning flashing across the pitch and trying to get as many of the Corn players as he could, rather than taking something like Skitter. And exactly as you said, Chris, in the first half, the momentum was definitely with the Bleeding Clowns. They were definitely, pressurizing. And I think they had the Rats down to, 3 or 4 players on the pitch at one stage. It was looking like it was going to be another one. So we know how dangerous Skaven can be. We know a great coach and a very entertaining coach to play against, Carl. So big shout out to you, Carl, in chat tonight. And he didn't let go of that. He really came back. He had stat busted a Marauder lineman. He kept in there despite getting casualties through as well. And it just takes one gutter runner. And there you can see it. Turn 15, one gutter runner, 1-0. Thank you very much. So I think Carl was more satisfied. I think from speaking to Scott, coach of Crades as well, possibly, like I said earlier, with Tom's coach, possibly felt there was 2 points left out there on the pitch, but can't take anything away from Carl on that. So well done, Carl.
Looking at Carl's roster as well, very much sticking by a lot of stat busted players in that team. He's got a passing 5 gutter runner, which no one's really going to be worried about. A movement 6 blitzer that is possibly a little bit painful there, but some good random skills in that team as well. And a good result for him looking at kind of previous results this season. He'd only got the 1 draw previously. So this is a really kind of good pushing sort of good result to push forward from. Tom, looking at the Bleeding Clowns in this season, Scott is, I think he's enjoying playing this team. He's being relatively careful with some of these skills, but he has got a lot of randoms there, but a lot of block on a lot of players already so far, getting a few mutations in as well, where it's good. And so far, an unbeaten start to the season. So,
Yeah.
maybe 2 lost points, but still a very strong start.
No, absolutely. Overhearing him speaking at the end of the game, he was saying that he actually had the Bleeding Clowns ready for 3 seasons ago. So he's really wanted to play this for a long time, but his head was obviously turned by Nurgle and Old World Alliance.
Whose head gets turned by Old World Alliance?
Exactly.
Just desperate people in desperate times, Chris.
I know.
I had the pleasure of playing on the pitch next to this one, and this clearly was the most fun game on Super Sunday yesterday, which was being played. I loved the fact that Carl was handing Scott a red balloon every time Scott caused one of his injuries on one of his players, which I thought was fantastic. So he's now proud owner of 4 red balloons, and which are now going to be adorned every time the Bleeding Clowns come onto the pitch. So both as we know, both players, both coaches, fantastic kind of coaches, and the great kind of vibe for the actual league. Yeah, really, really good hard game. Lots of hilarity, lots of dice going the wrong way, going the right way. This is what Blood Bowl's all about.
Well done to Carl. Well done to Scott. A good result for both coaches there. Both coaches have played similar numbers of games this season. We'll see how the second half of their group continues to go on. Next up, then, penultimate game is the Bitey Ducks versus the Jaffa Cakes. A 2-1 victory for the Lizard Man team against the Snots, and the barrage of inducements that came into the game as well. I will read the list of inducements that Scott took.
Before we do we have to give this a rating? Is this a 15 rating? If there's any small children, please be aware.
It's been 24 hours. I'm less stressed now. The stress has gone. So the inducements were a Bloodweiser keg, an extra team training, so an extra reroll, 2 bribes, riotous rookies, halfling master chef, fig the fixer, fungus the loon, helmet wolf, and a giant. A incredible list of inducements, 1,310. 1310k gold in this one. Absolutely mad amount. Gents, I'll hand over to any questions, because I still struggle to comprehend generally how the game went, because it was chaos. It was a case of reacting to the moment and not really planning anything, and it was very scrappy at points as well.
It had everything, and I got the sense, listening back to it again today, Chris, that, and I know you as a coach and a person, you don't like the chaos. You don't like it when you've got to react. You don't like it when you've got a coach who just will do everything. And I think it grates you a little bit, because Scott is such a nice bloody person, Scott Norman, and the fact that he enjoys the love of the game, and you love the fact that he loves it so much, and that makes you a happy person, but not when it's against you, and not when it's organized chaos, and it's what just it really irks your OCD, doesn't it? That's what it is.
I've played Scott a couple of times now. I've played the goblins, I've played the snots, and it is a really tricky game to go into, because you cannot plan. You can't come up with a plan of how to of what to do, because you don't know what you're going to face until you roll that bingo ball and see what numbers come out of it, and then you can start to plan a little bit. But even at that point, it's just, everything is being thrown at you, and it's your things are being thrown at you that normally you have to deal with 1 or 2 of them in a game, but instead, you have to deal with all of it. So yeah, it's a really tough team to play against. And the fact that you often get, like, if you get the swarming in and you get 14 players, the field is full. There's a lot to think about, and we survived it just about.
So would you technically say getting bigger star players, because obviously the Fungus the Loon and Helmet Wolf don't come with a lot of gold pieces. They don't cost a lot, do they? They're kind of down the lower end of the scale. Are we saying that if you're playing against Scott, you kind of want a mid to top range to knock out the likes of the giant and all the additional adjustments?
Yeah,
and then you've got something to more focus on.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think I wanted him to get Grack and Crumbleberry, because that takes up 2 slots, and then he wouldn't be able to take the giant. I think I thought, actually, if it was Morg or Varag, or any of those bigger players that cost a lot more money, then you maybe wouldn't have got the extra team training, or maybe you wouldn't have got the master chef, but being able to afford all of them kind of was a problem. But he ended up with a roster very, very similar to his goblins, with a chainsaw and a ball and chain, and the bribes and things like that. And that is something I had played against before, so that kind of helped. Scott is in the chat, and I'll let someone else read it because I'm scrolling up to it. Anybody want to read what Scott's put in the chat, because it looks like he's talking about making me sweat, which is true.
Yeah. Chris played so tactically, and had a dice roll gone my way or his way, the score line would have been very different. Hilarious, making him sweat for about 4 hours. I do feel the downside to the Snotlin OCTV is far too many rules. Yeah, you do have a whole library in your bag, Scott. We know. I forgot to swarm, and I feel that cost me when I had no safeties to put pressure on the skinks, making breaks for the end zone. Still, I had fun. Do I get a bonus point for making Chris so stressed out? If we could, we'd give you 5. Definitely. Well played. Fantastic.
No bonus points for additional stress. No, no, it was, it was a very scrappy game, and like Scott said, there were just a couple of dice rolls at a couple of points. I think a failed pickup and a re-rolled double both down into a double skull against the ball carrier. I think if either of those two had gone differently, I think it could have been 2-1 or 2-2, like 2-1 the other way. It was quite swingy. It was quite tight. I think I spent a lot of the second half with sort of 8 or 9 players compared to the 11 to 14. So, a very tight game. It really made you kind of think and have to really put some thought in it. Thought, but not prep, I think, is the thing for playing against this team. It requires an awful lot of thought, but very little preparation. Thank you very much, Scott, for a very fun game there. Very pleased to have come out with a result on my end. We go to our last game of the week, and Tom, we are coming to you with a 2-1 victory against the Norse side. 2-1 win against your bogey team, as you mentioned earlier, and your first win of the season, sir. Well done. Tell us about it.
Yeah, first and foremost, it was a great game. It was hilarity ensued. As you can tell by the thing, it was very much everyone was just being pushed around or double block. It was just not when the dice was rolled, nothing really happened. The second largest number of ones I've rolled in a game. So this was 22 ones in this game. Still undisputed, which was the 26 that I got against Scott and his Wood Elves. JD plays these team very well. He goes very aggressive, which was interesting, on the basis that he lines them right up on the front, and you just can't see a way through them. So I was trying to try different tactics. First time I've ever taken Cindy or in any of these matches. She's really quite good. Although there was no knockouts or injuries, she was kind of stunning quite a lot of people. So I managed to stun his front row just with Cindy, which was really good. Managed to move in. I won the roll off, but I chose to kick to him. So I actually, in the first half, took the ball from him, which I was very, very chuffed with. However, the next turn, I completely fluffed it by giving the ball straight back to him by doing some rookie maneuvers, by building up a cage to say, right, that's where my ball carrier is going to go before I'd pick the ball up. And then I obviously failed to pick the ball up. And his Valkyrie came storming down and scored a touchdown. By that time, I got to that point that I was 2 players down, and I was getting a bit like, oh, right, it's going this usual way. I'm going to lose this. And I thought, sod it, I'll try the infamous 1-turn touchdown by throwing a halfling. And amazingly, it paid off. I clearly hadn't been touching the dice, so I know that Jack has got some dice. If you ever play Jack, he sometimes gives out dice. They have been fantastic for me. So they've got all the Hun's luck in them by the looks of things. So that's what worked for me. At the end, it nearly was a 2-2 kind of draw, but there was a situation. So JD had the opportunity either to block or blitz my catcher, which was next to them, to then score the touchdown, or dodge away from the catcher. He chose to blitz the catcher with no re-rolls, double skulls. That was down he went, and he was stunned. At that point, there was no one near him on his team to actually go and pick the ball up, and he'd run out of turns. So commiserations, JD, but thank you so much for a really, really fun time.
Scott, Norse are an interesting team, I think, because they feel like, to me, they feel like the bastard offspring between humans and dwarfs. They're somewhere in between the two. They've got a bit of block there, but they're not as strong armor wise. But they've got a bit of edge about them. There's some grey area between those two teams. So this, to me, doesn't feel quite like a mirror match, because I think the humans probably have more options to what they can do. But there's probably, I imagine there's a familiarity if you're playing as humans and you've got got Norse in front of you, and maybe that helps a little bit with the planning. What do you think?
I do agree with you, Chris. I think if it was a direct mirror match with no skills, I think the Norse, with the amount of inherent block they start with, would win. However, the one thing which Tom has shown with the humans where they can have the edge is the amount of flexibility within that team. Being able to take Cindy, who, even if she doesn't blow people up or stun them, her presence and the threat of being blown up adds an extra dimension to the team. Plus, it doesn't always work, and more often it doesn't work than it does. So more failures than successes. But when it does work, a one-turn touchdown is something everybody loves. So it's difficult as a coach to pull it off. So well done, Mr. Hovel. We salute you, sir. So I agree with that, Chris. It's one of those unfortunate, in terms of the Norse, when they get to a certain level of skills, they can go on, but you've got to play them really exceptionally well. Are they a bad team? No, look at how John Reeder, he's won 2 titles with them. So, if you play them and play them well, but to do that, you've got to get them right in the right skills at the right level as well. Yeah. So JD, I think, has got some very good individual players. It's just about getting them all together. And I think that when they do work together, they can be stronger than humans, and they're very much different to dwarfs.
Tom, before we go on to the tables, then, what kind of stood out to me most wasn't your result here, but looking at this season and how much actually a win at the right time can change the way your outlook on it. You were sort of lingering down near the bottom end of the table, and 3 points has shot you nicely up into the top end of the bottom half. How are you feeling now off the back of this result compared to maybe how you were beforehand?
Yeah, it is surprising, and that's something I want to go away and just kind of understand a little bit more about this scoring. So, because as I say, it was not a bashy game. There was no real casualties, but it just surprised me because I was rock bottom at the bottom after 3 losses. There are obviously there's 2 teams that have played a lot less than me below. So, and I've got to play some really difficult teams, but it's given me a little bit of a boost. It was a big surprise when you actually told me that, because I hadn't even paid any attention to it, because I just assumed that, well, it was a win, but I've still lost 3. But that's really nice. It's nice to see.
Well done, sir, and well done to JD on what sounds like a fun and hard fought contest in this one. Let's have a little look at the standings as they are at the moment. Then, looking at the ABC, Scott and his Cherry Bombs are sitting very nicely at the top with 4 wins from 4, unbeaten, not conceded, best defense so far. Very, very strong result. Just ahead of the Wolverhampton Shamblers, Chaos Storm, and Throgs. Songington's Folly filling out the top 4. Very, very tight. Only 2 points separate second to 8th in that one, with a similar number of games played. So a very, very tight top half of the table there. Clueless Crusaders jump up to 11th with that first win of the season, leaving the bottom four, which is currently got Odin's Ravens, Waz's Berserkers, Hillbilly Howlers, and Boulders Bowlers in there. Looking at the NBC, John with his draw keeps himself at the top spot there. Again, another unbeaten team there with a very impressive touchdown difference. Luke's win puts him up to second, and the Bitey Ducks win puts them up to third. Bleeding Clowns in fourth, completing the top four there. Looking at the bottom end of that table, we've got 4 teams without a win at the moment: Crimson Coven, Dead Star Belgrave, Inglorious Bustards, and Boulders Army at the bottom of the standings.
Sorry, Chris. Technically, it's 5 teams without a win. Actually, it's 6 with Andy, 7 with Carl as well.
It's technically, yeah, it's technically 7. I was being kind.
Okay. I was just gonna point out how one win, if you look at that league as well, one win from anybody, from Harrison right down to the guys at the bottom, one win is going to propel you straight up that league.
Yeah.
2 wins is going to get you in the top 8. 3 wins and your top 4.
A single win from the five teams without a point in that division could take them up to 7th place. That's how kind of tight it is, and we've got that with both. We've got a very tight top and bottom half that I think at any point anyone can break out of and break into. It's looking like it could come down to the wire for a few of those places into which playoff you end up going into. Great. That is all of our games. All of the games gone through this week. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us. What have we got coming up this week? Well, we'll have some more live stream games coming to you as the week goes on. We will have the next episode of New Dice Please will come to you on Thursday as well. And then we will be back next Monday for another roundup of all of the action from the ADBBL. Scott, thank you very much. Tom, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. We will see you at the next one.